The shift is now. Tomorrow, not later. Now when the world tells me I'm ready, I am ready. I am aligned.
Welcome everyone. So glad you could get here today. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. A few minutes to arrive.
Has led me here. The old way is gone. The hustle for approval is over. The chase for external validation is
Welcome. If you're just arriving, we're going to get started very soon.
Manifest from a place of peace. Step into abundance because my energy is sovereign. The shift isn't in the world.
Welcome, folks. Glad you can make it.
Glad you're here. Welcome.
If you can, put your camera on. We'd love to see your smiling face. No problem if not. Just join us.
Responds to energy, not noise. The cosmos flows to those who
welcome everyone. Let's get started. I'm Cecile. I'm one of the co-founders and instructors here at Round Sky Solutions. And thank you for joining us for this introductory session on facilitating cooperation. I'm excited to meet you all here today, and it's fun to see familiar faces. I'm particularly excited to share and learn from you what we have learned and consolidated around facilitating cooperation. And as we get rolling here, we'd like you to know two things about Round Sky.
Yeah, hi, I'm Daniel, one of the co-founders and an instructor here at Round Sky. And I want to give a little introduction to Round Sky. We're a remotely operated worker-owned cooperative, meaning we're a business where the workers own it together. And I just wanted to say today that given the severity of disconnection and polarization that we're seeing in the world around us, that we wanted to offer some of these tools as a little part of generating more connection and health and effectiveness in the actual sharing of power instead of the taking of it, in a sense. So the first thing I want to name is something we see over and over: teams that deeply share values like cooperation, equity, and shared power, but whose structures don't actually support those values. They end up stuck in endless meetings, unclear decisions, informal hierarchies that nobody asked for. And we believe addressing that takes two things working together. One is some structural tools, how your team actually makes decisions, holds roles, and moves work forward. And the other is personal development, the inner capacities to help us grow and show up grounded and self-aware. And most approaches that we've come across pick one or the other, and we think you need both. In our approach, we teach both the structural mechanics like consent-based decision processes where everyone's concerns are heard and you actually reach a decision, and the inner skills like somatic practices to help you stay grounded when things get tense. What makes CoLab different is that these aren't really separate modules. The structure and the personal development work together. You can't facilitate shared power if you haven't named it, and you can't sustain it if you don't have practices to keep you regulated. So today you'll hear us talk about our Cooperative Leadership Certification Program, or CLCP as we call it for short. We'll reference some of the tools we teach within this training to work with sharing power and to help you facilitate meetings in a way that's in line with cooperative values. If this resonates and you're tired of leaving meetings tired and drained and want tools that actually work, we'd love to talk with you. The next step is to apply, and then we'll schedule a short conversation to see if it's a good fit to join the program if that's right. Applications for that are due the end of day Sunday, February 8th. Oh, you're muted, Cecile. Sorry about that.
A little bit about logistics. Many of us are on Zoom these days, but I want to touch on a few logistics. First of all, this session is being recorded and we will be sharing it back with you, so stay tuned for an email if you'd like. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat box, and you can find the chat box in the toolbar, likely on the bottom of your screen. Look for a little speaking bubble image, and Lauren and Daniel are going to say some hellos in the box so you can figure out where that is if you're not familiar with it. And we are going to leave time for questions at the end, but please do go ahead and put yours in the chat box whenever you have them. If you can, we'll address them in the flow, and if not, we'll hopefully leave time for them at the end. And we invite you to stay on mute because our mics are really good at picking up background noise, and that definitely impacts the recording. And for an overview of our plan for the webinar, after some brief introductions, we'll dig right into two different but related tools that we teach for supporting cooperation, along with links to further resources before wrapping up with the Q&A. And since we only have 1 quick hour to go over everything, you may leave with some questions, which is good. We'll get to what we can today, and there'll be more of these events, and we invite you to reach out to us directly as well.
Wonderful. Excuse me. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I just wanted to do a quick introduction myself. My name is Lauren. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns, and I'm joining from Atlanta, Georgia, where I'm based, and where my work focuses on building shared infrastructure for cooperative and community-owned enterprise. So I'm here today supporting the Round Sky team. I'm also a student of CoLab, and I use these tools and practices in my daily life and work. So we're going to do some more introductions in a moment, but first, I wanted to give us a chance to arrive together. And one of the ways that I support this work, both as a facilitator and as a collaborator, is by paying attention to what's happening in my body when I'm navigating shared power, uncertainty or nervousness, or conflict. So when facilitating for cooperation, it's very important that we feel grounded in our bodies and that we're allowing our bodies to be fully immersed in the moment. When we're rooted in our own agency, our own sensitivity, we're better able to orient ourselves to our own emotional and relational capacities right here in the context that we're actually in. So we're going to do a quick somatic practice that we can just do quickly together to settle in and be as present as we can for our time together. I'm going to offer a few suggestions for settling the body and the mind. If they work for you, great. If not, please feel free to do whatever helps you feel more present and resourced. And one of the simplest ways that we can be present with ourselves is through the breath. So we're going to start there. We're going to begin by taking 2 deep breaths together. And you can inhale slowly through your nose with a full, steady exhale. And then one more time, breathing in and letting it go. Needed that. As you continue breathing at your own pace, you might notice where your body is making contact with what's supporting you, your feet on the floor, your seat in the chair, your back against whatever you're leaning on. You might soften your gaze. See if you can soften your forehead, your shoulders, anywhere where you're holding tension. And then notice your breath as it moves in and out. You might let out a longer exhale, maybe with a quiet sigh or a hum, while you take a moment to notice what helps you feel grounded and ready to be here. You can use whatever you already know about yourself to arrive more fully. And when you're ready, we'll gently shift from sensing ourselves to sensing the group. And we're back in the reality where we're all here together and perhaps feeling curious about what's next. Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate your attentiveness and engaging with me in that quick practice. I'm going to reshare my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay. Looks like everyone can see that. Okay. So now we're going to create some space for us to get to know who's on the call. We find it meaningful to spend a few minutes in small groups, hearing directly from each other. So we're going to split up into breakout rooms, and you'll have about 4 minutes total. That's roughly 1 minute per person to introduce yourselves and respond to a reflection question. And before we send you off, Cecile and Daniel are going to model these introductions, and then we'll also put the prompts in the chat so that you can refer back to them. But essentially, you're going to introduce yourself. You might share your name, pronouns if you use them, where you're calling in from, any organization that you're connected with, whatever you feel. And then the reflection question is, share one thing about how decisions get made on your team or your organization that you wish worked differently. So we're going to go ahead, and Daniel and Cecile, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so I'm Daniel. I use he, him pronouns, and I live near Burlington, Vermont, in the unceded territory of the Abenaki people. And I'm one of the founders and facilitators and coaches here at Round Sky Solutions Cooperative. And I've been one of the main instructors for the trainings in recent years. What brought me here today is my curiosity about people and to meet, some of you, to get to experience being in this space with you all, and how in these times nurturing communities of shared power seems to be one of the key things that we can do in our lives to build resistance and resilience. And I've been reflecting recently on the power of human connection and how deeply necessary we are to each other, and how nourishing it is when that feels good and mutually supportive, and how quickly it can become difficult when we're in conflict or we're not hearing each other. So that's what I hope to address a bit today.
Wonderful. I'm Cecile. My pronouns are she, hers, and I'm also in Vermont, home of the Abenaki people. And I'm excited to be here today with you all to explore these questions of what it means to actually share power well consistently over time. We all work in teams, and sometimes that is amazingly smooth and joyful, and at other times it might be really sticky or, even very problematic with unspoken power dynamics and assumptions generating endless conflict and misalignment. And what brought me here today is my passion for supporting people using their power in healthy ways so that we can collectively build a generative world.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cecile and Daniel. If we're ready with the breakout rooms, I think we can go ahead and set those up. And again, you'll have 4 minutes to share with each other, and I can go ahead and put the questions in the chat if they're not already there. All right, see you back here soon.
Welcome back, folks. We'll start in just another few seconds once everyone's here.
Welcome back, folks. As we settle back into the whole group here, I wanted to offer a little context for our topic today. Being able to metabolize conflict or power dynamics into cooperation is a key feature of healthy cooperative teams. And that's much easier to say than to actually achieve consistently. As we can see in the national and global events unfolding around us, the inability to use power well has created a world where domination of others is on the rise, rather than healthy cooperation. From my perspective, part of the reason for that is simple. We all have different perspectives, and no matter how values aligned we might be, we're each unique people going through life with different histories, different resources at our disposal, different assumptions about how life works or how it should work. And this difference can actually be a huge resource. It affords a team the benefit of seeing issues from multiple angles, which can lead to better decisions, but only if a team knows how to surface and synthesize those perspectives readily and is willing to do so. Another reason it's hard to metabolize conflict into cooperation is that life is uncertain. There's always something new and challenging to deal with, and no matter how prepared we are, managing uncertainty with as much clarity as possible without resisting what needs to change can highlight differences and increase the likelihood of conflict. A third reason is that people have differing ideas about how to cooperate in the first place. It can be difficult to create time in our busy organizations to discuss the ground rules for how we work together, but without doing that, we will inevitably conflict about the basics. For example, do we all need team members to respond to their emails within 24 hours, or is a week okay? What is our decision process? How do we hold each other accountable? How do we work with emotionally charged content? Most teams, even the most ones committed to cooperation, operate with implicit power dynamics running the show. And here's the thing, you can't share power you haven't named. Until we can collectively articulate how we want to use our power, it's nearly impossible to shift how things get done. Existing implicit structures protect existing power dynamics, and without cooperative processes, this informal hierarchy will continue to fill the gap. Today, we're going to offer you a small taste of the couple of the tools we use in our program for helping teams share power consistently well. We'll also share some ideas on how to use somatics to resource yourself and your team so that you can increase your capacity to facilitate cooperation even when things are tense.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the first kind of technique we want to offer up, is just this focus on somatics to get connected with our bodies, just like we did earlier on when Lauren led that little, guided somatic arrival, as we often call it, a somatic arrival. So the somatic orientation, is interesting. Taking a somatic orientation means orienting to the fact that we have bodies. It's about being in our bodies, our relationship with our bodies, our ongoing conversation with our bodies. Somatics is a term that encompasses something human beings have always known, even if many of us have lost touch with it along the way. It's a reverence for all that we are, including our physical selves. Many cultures and traditions throughout history have maintained this connection. But in the modern West, especially, this relationship to our bodies, our needs and our desires and our feelings has been disrupted. It's been eclipsed by our over-reliance on our minds and by long cultural habits of controlling ourselves and others. We're taught to distrust our bodies and to prioritize living to external standards. And there are many layers of trauma that make it difficult to know where to begin trusting our bodies again. Fortunately, in recent decades, there's been a resurgence of interest in how our bodies and nervous systems play a crucial role in our ability to be creative and communicative with the people in our lives. The growing awareness of trauma, how that impacts our nervous system, gives us new tools to work together with more ease. And in Collab, we integrate these somatic practices as inner skills, ways to stay grounded and regulated when tension arises, so you can actually show up for the hard conversations that shared power requires. So there's several ways I like to think about having our bodies as a resource. There's kind of like a few different themes. First one is grounding, centering, and noticing. When we're centered, we can offer that to others. Somatic centering invites us to become more familiar with and connected to whatever our sensory experience is, while at the same time creating space around it by noticing some of the other things we can possibly feel. In the centering practice we just did, we had an opportunity to notice our own sensations and our own states of being. Knowing our own and each other's emotional and bodily states can help us determine our capacity to collaborate. It can also inform us how we want to collaborate. If half the room is exhausted or activated, that's really good information to know about how to proceed. Our bodies can also be a source of wisdom and creativity. The body knows things the conceptual mind doesn't, so it's something we can tap into in choosing how to respond in uncertain moments during facilitation. Sometimes that means relying more on our senses or our gut feeling about what to do next, rather than just our ideas about what's going on. This isn't about abandoning clear thinking. It's about expanding the source of information we can draw on. And another theme is the skillful holding of bigger feelings. Somatic work gives us space to start processing and more skillfully expressing overwhelming or hard to accept emotions that tend to live in the body. When we do this, we learn more about ourselves and the situation. We become more available and empathetic to those experiences in others, and we're less likely to enter into our own reactive states during challenging interactions. It can give us the skills to express ourselves honestly from our bodies and to hold space for how others may feel as a result of our emotional transparency. So we include somatics in our facilitator training because it helps facilitators show up and meet people and situations more fully. In the context of uncertainty, it's important to check in and be aware of our bodies so we can fully show up with our own sense of what needs to be addressed. And sometimes when we're not sure what to do next, our bodies can point the way forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Daniel. And I just wanted to add, there is something about those moments of conflicting power dynamics when I'm facilitating a cooperative team, where I often notice an internal urge to move quickly, to fix it, resolve it, smooth things over right away. And what I've learned is that urgency is usually a signal, not a directive. And so it helps when I can slow down and reconnect with my body. I feel something shift, and it can be as simple as a breath, a pause, or even just naming that we need to slow the conversation down. That can be a real resource. And practice that might look like, just that, taking a breath when I feel myself getting defensive or when feel myself getting uncomfortable, inviting the group to pause when I notice that we're, maybe not listening or feeling distracted, or getting curious about my own assumptions about something somebody said, someone did, before responding. Slowing down often creates more space for creativity, clarity, and real cooperation. And so, wanted to just leave you all with a few reflections to sit with us for after the call. I want you to think about when you're about to facilitate or participate in a cooperative meeting. What do you notice in your body? How does this change what you notice in your body depending on what's happening around you? What are your tactics, if you have any, to regroup and ground so that you can think creatively about what to do next, what action to take next? And finally, how could you facilitate others in your circle to remember the power of their somatic awareness also? All right, and I'll leave those with you all.
Thank you for those rich questions, Lauren. Yeah, it's actually really transformative to integrate these approaches to our bodies into our work with others. And we've also designed an optimal flow for a meeting process that includes a number of key elements that help teams facilitate cooperation. One really practical thing you can do is to have an agreed upon format for how your meetings will be run. This helps facilitate cooperation because everyone can be on the same page about what to expect. So there's no guessing about how decisions will be made or who gets to speak when. You can see the outline here of the meeting practice we've researched and synthesized as a set of best practices for cooperation. And today we're going to focus on just one part of this meeting flow, the process that we call agenda building or tension surfacing. This is where everyone on the team gets to name what's alive for them, what needs attention, what's stuck. It's one of the simplest ways to start distributing power in your meetings because the agenda stops being something the leader decides and starts being something the group builds together. So the Cooperative Leadership Certification Program dives deeply into each of these sections of the meeting, and students get a chance to practice facilitating each piece. So if improving your facilitation and having more tools for working cooperatively with teams is something you're looking for, this course is a great place to develop yourself through proven methods for facilitating cooperative leadership and management. And what we're here today to share is a method for participant-centered agendas that we call attention-driven meeting. This is a practice we first learned from Holacracy and have further developed with additional methods and perspectives. And here's why this matters. To effectively facilitate cooperation, we need all the perspectives on our team to be surfaced, not just the loudest voices or the ones with the most positional authority. And we need clear processes for metabolizing and synthesizing those perspectives into decisions and next steps. The tension-driven meeting is designed to do exactly that. It creates a structure and a space where everyone's concerns and ideas can come forward, and where the group has a way to actually work with them. We do this through a process that lets everyone in the meeting build the agenda in real time with each other, and then prioritize it together what is most important to focus on today. There are two features of this process, which I'll name now, and then I'll go into more detail on them. First of all, we offer an invitation for everyone to bring forward what they want to address or what's on their mind for the team. We encourage this to be a bodily, somatic sensing of what we or the organization needs. And we call these motivations that people are sensing tensions. Secondly, we have an agreed upon place in our meeting practice, a way and a place for us to collect what we are each sensing individually, which we can then during agenda processing turn into beneficial outcomes for the team. Now, I want you all to take a moment and think about a meeting that you're a part of regularly. Where would a tension surfacing process make the biggest difference? Feel free to drop that in the chat or just hold that in mind as we continue.
Okay. So what do we mean by sensing tensions? With collab, we say that tensions arise from the difference between where we are and where we sense we could be. They're not inherently negative. They're a form of potential energy. A tension might show up as something that feels stuck or unclear, something frustrating, or something exciting that wants to move forward. During the agenda building portion of every meeting, everyone is invited to sense into what they feel motivated to bring forward and add those things to the meeting agenda. So, as Camille said, this is a mind and body approach to noticing what we personally feel motivated to bring to the team for consideration. And instead of the leader or manager or director deciding what the group talks about, everyone gets to name what needs attention from their perspective. And over time, this builds a culture where all voices shape the direction of the work. We sometimes use an archery metaphor, not literally, but to illustrate the potential energy and direction. Each person's creative contribution is like drawing back a bowstring, and the tension is the moment of gathering energy before the release. As facilitators, our role is to support people in surfacing those tensions and then guide the group through processes that help the energy move forward toward a clear outcome. You might be, advanced a little too quickly. Sorry about that. But yeah, you might be familiar with the phrase, you probably are familiar with the phrase, I could feel the tension in the room. Especially in instances where people might be afraid to name the tension that they feel. Under the collab approach, tension isn't something to avoid. It's something to notice and invite. Tensions can be pleasurable, like I said, it can be excitement or curiosity, or they can be uncomfortable, like uncertainty or conflict. It can be simple questions or signals pointing towards bigger changes. What matters is having a place to surface them and a process to work with them. All right.
Yeah. So practically speaking, what do we do with these tensions? Before getting into the agenda section of our meeting, we're talking about like a practice for our meetings, right? So we've got that whole flow that Cecile showed you. We're in the agenda building section, and before we get into the beginning of the agenda section, we have the facilitator ask the question, hey, does anyone have any agenda items they'd like to add to the agenda? Or does anyone have any tensions that they'd like to surface? And we're typically working from a shared document in either the scribe for the meeting or the team members themselves can just add that, short title for their agenda item right onto the list of items to consider. Or it can be written on a large piece of paper or whiteboard if you're in an in-person meeting. One important note, we always have a tension holder, and this is like the owner of this agenda item, right? So we have a tension holder for each item. The tension holder both identifies what the tension is, and after we're working on the agenda item, they're the one to determine if the tension has been moved forward for them. More about that soon. We always ask if there are any tensions in each meeting based on what people are sensing. And also unaddressed tensions from past meetings can be brought forward again by the tension holder if they still feel relevant until they're addressed. So everyone has this opportunity to get their tensions on the agenda. And at Round Sky and in the organizations we coach, we use what we call a living agenda. And we'll share the template for that. Actually, we have a Google Doc, which I think Cecile's going to put in a link to in the chat box. And this is the place where we place our tensions as agenda items. If it's not clear what the item is about, at the beginning, we ask the tension holder to briefly introduce their item, like really quickly, like 10 seconds. It's not a time to get into it, just a time to like name it so that people have a rough idea of what you're talking about. And then once the agenda is built, the facilitator is then in charge of choosing like, okay, what order are we going to go in? They can rearrange the order and say, okay, let's start with this one. And we can use other process tools. Once we get into the tension, we can use other process tools like integrative consent, which we teach in our training, to effectively move that tension forward towards a resolution for the person that's brought it forward in a way that's workable for everyone on the team. Once a team has some practice with this, they can also add agenda items ahead of the meeting because it's a living agenda Google Doc. Like I often, like during the week, I'm like, oh, that thing that we need to talk about, and I write it on the agenda, on Tuesday for the meeting on Friday or whatever. So yeah, you can add things ahead of time that can streamline the time in the meeting itself, less time kind of introducing tensions and stuff like that, which can help with just a little bit of efficiency. And with practice, this process can help provide structure for your team to facilitate a lot more cooperation and participation.
So I wanted to take a moment and just let this all sink in for us a little bit before we move on. I'm going to invite you to think of a team meeting on your radar, past or coming up, and what tensions you might bring there. As you reflect on that, we're going to put some examples into the chat box. And if you can, think of a tension you might have brought to or might bring to an upcoming meeting, and place as many tensions as you can think of into the chat box so we can all get a sense of what are we talking about here.
You can even practice formatting it like we do in our meetings with the tension first and then like dash and then your name, so we know who the owner of that tension is. But whatever, we've got your icon beside the chat anyway, so.
Wonderful. So yeah, feel free to share with us what has been on your heart or your mind with your teams. What are some good examples there that we can help each other learn what this is or what it might feel like to identify these tensions and put them forward. So yeah, these are great. Should we work on this short-term project or work towards longer term? Wonderful. And that came from Gemma. Thank you, Gemma. Yep. And from Noel, should we do this regular spring program or create a new activity? What do we realistically have collective capacity to do? Fantastic tension. Love it. From Jeannie, how can we move through this process faster? Yes, yes. Yeah. And also from Jeannie, the use of the word tension is interesting. Okay, this seems like a question. I'm going to save that for the Q&A. Jeannie, I love that question. So thank you all who have been sharing. These are great examples. Keep putting them up there for us to sort of mull over as we understand. What are these tensions? Why might they help? So back to you, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks. That's really great to see some of these examples. You're getting the idea. That's clear. We use the power of tensions because when you have a collaboratively designed meeting practice and you're working with tensions, you can show up to just about any meeting ready to facilitate, for one thing. You know that together you'll do a good job and that you'll discuss what is actually relevant to the people in the room. It's also a practice that efficiently invites all team members to bring forward whatever's on their mind with respect to that team. That might be celebrations of work well done, or it might be things that aren't working, priorities that need revisiting, or major impediments in our work or even our personal lives that need to be addressed in order to move things forward. It creates space to support each other in creating solutions and moving forward. Just a quick note on that too. I like to think of like we're bringing something, an individual is bringing something forward that they sense, and then collectively we're helping them move that forward for their benefit and for the benefit of the team. It builds engagement because everyone is actively shaping what we talk about. People aren't just attending the meeting, they're really building it. It gives people agency over how to move their desires for change forward. If something matters to you, you have a clear path to raise it. It relieves the burden of one person preparing the agenda and the inherent bias that emerges when one person deciding what's worth discussing. And finally, it distributes power in a concrete, practical way. The agenda stops being a top-down decision and becomes a shared act.
So, in sum, we would like to invite you to consider reframing your meetings with tensions to get at the heart of the matter and source your agendas from your team so that they can align to the work together, and do this by tapping into the needs of those members on your team. So my own reflections on tension-driven meetings for healthy collaboration are that trust is paramount, and yet it can be built through reliably surfacing and processing tensions over time. When people see that it's actually safe to raise concerns and that those concerns can be addressed, trust grows. It can also feel like a lot of responsibility to bring tensions forward, especially if you or your team isn't used to the format, or if you're used to the manager setting the agenda. So we recommend easing into the process. Give yourselves permission to learn it gradually. Also, be somatically discerning about whether something has been moved forward for you. Check in with your body. Does this feel result enough for now? And know that that's within the context of the invitation to revisiting any tension or agreement or any output at any time. You do not have to get it perfect in the moment. That takes some of the pressure off. And as a facilitator, it's really important to give your tension holders some time and space to process their tensions. If they don't know how they want to address it, try offering suggestions or inviting group wisdom, and recognize that some people and some tensions may need more space for processing than others.
Yeah, so as we wrap things up, I invite you to think back to the check-in question about one team dynamic or meeting pattern that you were hoping to shift, and to consider which of these tools we shared today were most relevant to your situation. I want to say that managing the role of facilitator in cooperative settings takes a variety of approaches. And during this webinar, we've offered a couple of tools, and in our course, we go deeper into somatics and facilitating your group's tensions. We also work with personal development, how you want to grow as a person to better show up as a facilitator and team member. And we work with distributing decision-making power and work through roles which helps teams gain clarity about how they want to work together collectively. I'm often telling applicants to our training that participants learn these process tools in order to build alignment and transparency through participation. Our tools are particularly good at helping groups experiment together, identify next steps, and bridge individual sensing with collective action. So here's a question to sit with. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident do you feel facilitating a tension-driven meeting for your team, say next week? I don't know. I'd say if it's like, so I'll give you a moment to like actually consider that. Like, is this something that you could just adopt and are you ready to go? And I'd just say if you're not quite ready to go, maybe you're a 7 or less. That is exactly the gap that the Cooperative Leadership Certification Program is designed to close. So it's not just the concepts, but it's the practice, the feedback, and the community to build a real skill. If this resonates and you are curious to learn more about all this and join us this winter for the program, submit your application today. Start the conversation about how you can integrate these tools into in the next cohort of learning that we're starting. Applications are due Sunday, February 8th, and each applicant gets a chance to discuss the training more in depth with us in an interview. We like to talk with everyone before they join the program. So here's the link to our info page, and which you've probably all seen actually, because it's the same page that you register for the webinar on. But take a look with the rest of the page with a little more, and you should also get it. See a place at the bottom to apply for the training. If you'd like to do that, please do.
Great. Well, I'm seeing some really juicy questions in the chat box. Thank you all. And we are moving now into our Q&A. So I invite you to add any additional questions you'd like. And also, if you see questions in there that you are particularly interested in, please put a little like or whatever on them. That'll bump them up a little. But let's also, if you want to open your mic to share your question, that is also very welcome here. So feel free to raise your hand so that we know that you would like to do that by voice. And in the meantime, I'm going to get started with some of the questions that we've already seen offered in the chat box, and in no particular order. I haven't taken time to sort of sort these, but I'm going to read them out for those who are watching the recording or listening to the recording. And let's start with this one that says, how do folks then prioritize among the tensions raised? That is a fabulous question. Daniel, do you want to take a crack at that, or Lauren?
Sure. Well, thanks. I'll jump right in. I was right on my mic there. Yeah, we say that the facilitator, we in collab, we vest the facilitator with a good chunk of power, right? Which is, this is all about like distributing power. So we distribute power, concrete, to the facilitator to make those kinds of choices about how to order the agenda. That said, we have a great little tool for polling people in the meeting about what they feel is a priority, what they feel is urgent, things like that, so that the facilitator can get more data to like base their decisions on. Because the facilitator might not know that something is urgent, for a particular project, right? That they're not so involved in. So we have a polling process that we almost always use to give the facilitator information in setting the order of the agenda.
Neat. Thank you, Daniel. And another question in the chat box from Jamila. Surfacing tensions can be used to take up space, suppress input, or deflect accountability. How can this be used and responded to? Fabulous question. I'll jump in on that first and would love to hear from you all. But one of the things about using a polling method that Daniel just described to us, enables the team collectively to direct us towards what is actually most helpful for the team, and away from those things that are, disruptive, essentially, that don't have integrity in how they are being put forward, essentially. And so far, and I can, this is based on, some 15 years of using this practice, I've not seen those ways of undermining each other really take over the space, co-opt the space. And that's partially because, we're using this polling, which enables us collectively to sort of sidestep those kinds of tendencies. There's also a number of other practices that we don't have time to address here in this call today, but we do get into in the course, as to how to work with what's underneath someone's desire to undermine someone, like what's actually going on there. And it could be an interpersonal conflict. It could be that we aren't aligned on our strategy. It could be all kinds of things. And in the course, you'll learn how to sort these tensions into what's actually underneath them, not what they're presenting as. And that's also a very powerful way to sort of, because if you have someone on the team who's trying to undermine other people, that's something that needs addressing at the root. And that's what we can, we'll encourage you to do. Yeah, fabulous question.
And just a quick aside on that, it's very often that people aren't actually trying to undermine. They just have issues that aren't getting attention. And so they're bringing them up in maybe a way that's not so helpful. But over time, as people actually get their issues addressed by the team and we find out what's really underneath that, then it's just much more common that people kind of are glad to be able to have a place to have things moved forward for them and for others. So it tends to sort itself out. Not always, some teams can be really difficult, of course. I know people are people, but that's also true.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, one more question here. What if you are in spaces where folks are reticent to raise their concerns, tension, because they might be met with a good question, but not a discussion or next steps? Lauren, Daniel, do either of you feel called to respond? If not, I can jump in. Okay. Yeah. So what I find happens is that there is a certain percentage of every team where people are reticent, right? And often good cause, right? If any, many, myself for sure included, have experienced times where raising concerns has been met with punishment, actually. So the reticence is valid, and so as a team, our work is to notice that there's reticence and to do the work that we can collectively to process the tensions that are coming out with integrity, right? And moving them incrementally forward. And as that gets repeated over and over and over again, and the people who are reticent on the team can see that actually they are being welcomed, their concerns are being welcomed into the space, not only welcomed, but being processed to something that's really helpful for the team, that reticence loosens. It's really through doing that people can see that, oh, this is safe. And that it's actually concretely, like, we literally have a practice that is going to get us to something incrementally better than where we currently are. So I would just say keep practicing, and let that reticence just kind of melt through seeing how things play out.
And it's not just about the tension driven process, right? Because if you have tension driven process but you don't have a good way of resolving those tensions, you don't have fair and equitable decision making processes, for instance, and things like that, then tension surfacing is not an answer in and of itself, right? We often think of collab as a Cecile talks about it as the whole canoe. The gunnels and the paddles and the seats and the hull, like, they don't work by themselves. They have to be, the whole thing has to work together as a unit in a sense. And so there are some other supporting processes and structures that are critical for having things go well and to build that trust. And it's not just about giving people initial participation rights.
Nice. So keep bringing the questions on if you have them. We have a few more still. So one of them was, how much time would you recommend setting aside for when we start implementing tension-driven meetings for our team? Would an hour meeting be sufficient? I can jump in and say that, yes, an hour is plenty of time to get started. However, I would also wrap into your mind that integrating this practice in a way that teams feel like, oh, we've got this, minimum of 6 weeks and probably several months to really be able to see how the processing of tensions has shifted the power sharing dynamics on your team. So think of this as a long-term practice that we can begin with a fairly low bar to entry, but it does take time to play out.
And we don't guarantee that all tensions that are raised in a particular meeting are going to get addressed in that meeting, right? So we prioritize the agenda item, we get to what we can get to, and the rest of the things either get worked out, in other ways, or they get brought back to the next meeting, or perhaps they become irrelevant because it's their time. There's a time bound kind of thing. So, yeah, we don't. An hour's fine to get started.
Yes.
You won't get
Thank you. And it relates to another question we got, which is, I think surfacing tensions is useful to sharing underlying issues, problems. I would think they could be discussed at the time, or if large, scheduled for a future meeting. Exactly what Daniel was just pointing to, is that one of the outcomes of any tension could be, oh, we're going to set up a special meeting to discuss. And that's only if it's really needs extra time. Yes, and Lori, I just saw your recent question. So is this just an introduction to running a meeting? In your full course, you'll be discussing good decision-making processes. Exactly. Yeah, not just decision-making processes, but a whole slew of processes for collaborative accountability, which is also a huge issue in teams. As well as, what are some of the areas of personal development that we might take on to make us better facilitators and team members. There's a lot that goes into the course.
As well as one other key feature of the course is the kind of organizational design, our conception of teams, which we call scopes, and roles, the kind of like how we divide up the work that needs to be done between the various teams and roles on those teams. things like that. So there's a lot that goes into the training in terms of the whole kind of collab operating system.
Nice. Here's another juicy question. Do you have advice on how to navigate spaces where others are bringing urgency when you feel you or others in the space need space to process, particularly if the person bringing urgency has more positional power? Daniel, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, sure. Well, for one thing, the whole collab operating process is trying to flatten various forms of positional power. So like there's other things at play here for collab besides just what happens in a meeting. But in that situation, yeah, I think you need better decision making processes, even like where positional power is less relevant to that particular discussion. For instance, the positional power might just have great insight about what the larger part of the organization needs or something like that, and they have great insight to help adapt the proposal that comes out of your tension. But everyone gets to participate and have an equitable participatory kind of input to whatever the actual output of the tension is. I don't know if that helps, but that's part of it.
Yeah, I would just add one other quick thing about that, which is that within our ecology practices, we have a practice for setting our strategy, which is essentially what are our priorities? What is the most important thing for us to do? We really encourage teams to have that. And then the question of urgency, we can always point back to, well, we already set our priorities. Here's where they are. Like, and perhaps perhaps the urgency is pointing to a strategic initiative, but it might not be. And it really helps to collectively identify what is most important, rather than just depending upon the positional power to make those determinations for us. Wonderful questions here. We have about 3 minutes left, and I want to take a moment and talk about some of the questions referring to holacracy and sociocracy. So I'll read those off. What are your thoughts on implementing holacracy and self-management practices? Do you build on or modify those, or do you promote your own? And similarly, how similar/different is your decision-making structure compared to sociocracy? So what I would say is that collab is a synthesis of over a dozen different methodologies and 20 different bodies of theoretical work on what it takes to actually be a cooperative, collaborative team. And that includes sociocracy and holacracy. Those are both integrated and then being built upon. And so what we believe we've done is take the best of those and woven them into comprehensive ecology of practices, which are much easier to learn than going out and learning the sociocracies, the holacracies, the appreciative inquiries, the results-based accountabilities, the everything, right? So we've kind of done the work of bringing those together and weaving them into something which is pretty straightforward, relatively easy to learn. So specifically, decision-making is built upon sociocracy's consent model, but it then also integrates holacracy's understanding of what it means to object and also validate objections. And then we've also taken all that and made it more human. So there's some ways in which holacracy is fairly rigid and doesn't really consider how human psyches work very well. And so we have softened it and invited more humanity into the practice. Essentially, there's a lot more to say there, but that's a brief brushstrokes on those questions, which are very rich. And there are so many other questions here that we just did not have time to get to. What I'd like to do is, since we're at the top of the hour, say thank you and goodbye to those of you who need to leave, and then we'll stay on the call a little longer, a few more minutes, just to wrap up the rest of the questions. So if you have time to stay or to watch the recording afterwards, we'll try to get to the rest of them. And
Yeah, That's great. And if maybe just as a little celebration, I invite you all to like unmute yourselves and just like say goodbye or thank you or have a great winter or whatever. And just let's have a little moment of gratitude. Thank you so much for being here.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let us
Thanks for
know.
what you're doing.
Thank you. And you're welcome
Thank
to stay
you.
for the questions if you like.
Okay.
We'll keep the recording running.
And to get to the full picture, we go to this link that you provided for the information about the whole course.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
we'll put that in the chat. We'll put that in the
Could you
chat again right
Put
now.
that again in the chat because there are a few links.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll
So
do that right
thanks.
now.
Daniel, are you doing that?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
How long have you guys existed?
Since 2012.
2012. Okay.
I think that's officially 15 years.
Wow.
No, what? Is that 15? No, 13, 14?
I'm
2026.
doing my math 13. Thank you. Doing my
62
I
math
is-
have
wrong.
14.
Thank you. Somebody's got a challenged math brain. Okay, awesome. Well, let's come back, and if any of you have more questions, please pop them into the chat box. But let's pick up the ones we haven't gotten to yet. One of them was, what is admin and ops? And Lauren, I wonder if you want to take a crack at that.
Totally, yeah. Admin and ops reports, or ops, are two sections of the standard meeting practice. The admin section is basically, just a time for the facilitator at the beginning of the meeting to explain any logistical considerations or logistical details that the participants need to know. Participants can also share if there is anything that is going to disrupt them or that may be preventing them from participating fully or being fully present. It's just kind of a chance for everyone to set the stage for what's going to happen in this meeting. So we also confirm what time the meeting is ending. We may confirm what the meeting is about. And that's just part of the admin section. So it's just a few minutes at the top of the meeting where the facilitator and the participants share anything that is good information for everyone to know. Ops and ops reporting is one of my favorite parts of the meeting. It's very juicy, it's very rich. And this is an opportunity, it's probably kind of, a good, this is really part of the juice of the meeting. But everyone goes around and shares what they have worked on since the last time that the team met and what they'll be working on moving forward. They're intended to be brief, just kind of high level overviews. Sometimes we even put a time limit on them, no more than 2 minutes. And if there's anything that needs to go into deeper detail from the ops reports, it's added to the agenda as attention, and it's worked out later then. So those are two kind of key pieces of the standard meeting practice. That we're referring to when we say admin and ops reports. Anything else y'all would add?
That's great. Thank you, Lauren.
And of course, any of you who are still here want to ask a question live, you're very welcome to raise your hand or even just unmute yourself. I'm happy to hear your voices as well. And otherwise, Cecile, please continue.
Yeah, so another interesting one is the use of the word tensions is interesting. It seems like it might have negative connotations that make it harder for someone to speak up. How do you soften it / invite responses?
I just often say, if it seems like that, if people aren't used to that lingo yet, right? Because it is kind of a, our use of it is kind of a collab lingo or something, which, perhaps that's unfortunate, or maybe it's helpful because it does point to something. In some ways, I like it. But I hear that a lot about that is it a negative connotation. And I just say, well, is there anything on your mind you'd like to add to the agenda? Or is there anything you're sensing that you'd like to add to the agenda? Or are there any agenda items that you want to get addressed today? So there's plenty of other ways to invite that without using that word.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. And the last one that we currently have is, how do you influence groups or teams that you don't lead to adopt this practice? In parentheses, to improve your own experience as a participant, LOL. I love that question. Such a frequently asked question, just FYI, and mostly by students in the program. And the short answer is that I find it's really helpful to identify where the team is in pain. Where is the team currently suffering? And that might be different team to team. It may be that, they have what's supposed to be a 1-hour meeting that regularly runs 3 hours, right? That's a significant pain point. Could be that, they have 1 or 2 people who are constantly talking, whatever it is. Find that and then make the connection between that and how these processes will alleviate that pain. And that is usually a good way to do it consciously. There's also ways of doing this work implicitly. And we sometimes call those guerrilla tactics, but yes, there are plenty of ways to introduce this work that don't require you sort of going at it directly. And we do get into that towards the end of the program once you've been introduced to the tools, because you kind of got to know what you're going to try to do first, and then we can talk about how do you implement it in your particular situation. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Lauren or Daniel?
Well, just that it is a big focus of the training. Like the last third of the training is really, we've gotten like the basics down at that point, and it's really about implementation. What are we going to do? How do we strategize actually bringing this to our teams? That kind of thing. It's like is much more the tenor of the conversation, roughly speaking, within the program. Rochelle, I noticed you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I couldn't find the button, so I just came on video.
No.
Yeah, my question is, do you all, in your framework, is there usually one person who is a facilitator for each meeting, or do you have like a rotating facilitator style?
Lauren, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to take that one, Rochelle. Great question. As a student of CoLab, we're taught that it is important for everyone on the team to know the duties of a facilitator and a note taker, as well. We call it the scribe. It's a good idea for just the whole team to be familiar with those duties, know what the accountabilities are, and are able to step in for the team if needed. Typically, if we're talking about a team that is just starting to implement CoLab, there's a recommendation that one person take the job of facilitator, the job of note taker, temporarily. Maybe 6, 8, 12 weeks, just until we kind of getting into a rhythm, and then you can start to rotate. But it's really whatever works for the team in the long term as well. I think, if it's good for you all to have, a designated facilitator for, a month at a time, or whatever the case may be, that's something that the team can work out according to what feels best for you all's flow. But yeah, in any case, we do recommend everyone on the team at least knowing what the duties of a facilitator and note taker are, so that if needed, they can step in and fulfill them.
And Rochelle, in case you were referring to the program, what we do is have students, after the first session, a student facilitates and a student scribes every session, and we do the coaching real time so that folks get practice with it. Yeah. All right, sweet. Well, are there any other questions or comments in the room? And if not, I think we might be ready to wrap and close. So thank you all again so much for being here. Really appreciate your interest in this topic. I think it's one that is vital to our species at this time. So
for sure. Second that. Thank you all for your presence and for engaging so thoughtfully. And yeah, excited to see what happens as you sit with these ideas and they start to move from theory to integration to practice.
Yeah. And join us if you feel called to, and please reach out in any way if something here struck you and you have a question or anything like that. So wishing you all well in your cooperative journey. Thanks for being here.
Take care. Bye, everyone.